College admissions can be particularly grueling, especially if your dream college or university happens to be in the top ranked ones. Which is why it's always a smart idea to consider speaking to somebody who's already walked the path. My name is Anand Venkateshan. I'm the founder of mentorscapital.com. We are a mentorship, test preparation, and admissions consulting platform. In this series of globe-trotting conversations, I speak to some of our past achievers and ask them to recount their journey on how they prepared for the GMAT, applied to various colleges and universities, and aced personal interviews in their own journey. Hi Asmita, thanks for joining us today. Asmita is a ISB YLP program joinee and has just completed her program from the Indian School of Business. So I'm very excited to have you on board today, Asmita.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So quickly tell us what you've been doing. What's been going on in your life in the recent few months.
I like you mentioned, I've just graduated. We graduated on 3rd June and I joined NICA on 13th June. So I didn't really get an adjustment period from college to work. So I think we're back to the work hustle, which honestly isn't that nice because now we know there's no MBA to put a break in it. This is the rest of our life.
Indeed.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Done with MBA. It's back to work now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that most people who go through a 1-year MBA tend to sort of worry about, saying it's just too fast paced and then gives you very little time to enjoy yourself. So has that been your experience as well?
Yes and no. So when pre-placements, it feels like you don't have enough time in your life for anything that you want to do. Post-placements, we're all purposeless because we found the job we wanted. And now we're all just sitting like, what's next? We've partied, we've studied, we've done everything there was to do. What's next? So we spend like 2-3 months post-placements just wandering around, hoping to get meaning in life again. But I think that's the part you remember also. Like you forget because those are the last 2-3 months you kind of live. You forget all the hustle wala period. You forget how stressed you were. You forget all the assignment deadlines, and you just remember that sweet. What do you call, like a
memory of your batch?
Yeah, a very protected memory of your course that you have, where you were just happy and spending time with your friends, and yeah.
Absolutely. That does sound like very, very similar to my experience as well. So I kind of empathize with you on that. But let's get started with this interview on something that is almost a regular feature in any B school interview, which is, what is your career goal? I know you're working with Leica, and I know that sort of tells us something about what you wish to do with your corporate career, but could you spell out your career plans for those who are watching this video?
I think largely what I did realize about myself working through my internships and the initial period was that I get very bored if I'm restricted to one function only. So that's why I think joining in, I kind of knew that I want to get into more generalist strategy roles where it just differs project to project, problem to problem, day to day. So that's kind of where I've headed with my NICA role as well. I'm working as a strategy and ops manager in NICA fashion. And I think I'd like to continue in roles such as these where, you kind of continue to learn, collaborate with different stakeholders, collaborate with different functions. And yeah, we're always in the bigger picture side of things, which I enjoy.
Okay. And I mean, it's no surprise that you're getting into sort of general management, and because I'd say ISB is one of the few schools in India that sort of prides itself on being generalistic, or being a consulting / general management school. And so does your experience there sort of attest to this fact, or is this just hearsay?
Definitely. So I think ISB is one of the only B schools we have that does not force you to have a specialization. We all sit for our placements with the same subjects that we've all studied. There is no division into finance, marketing, anything at that point. Post that also, we're not required to graduate with the specialization. It just depends on what electives you take. If you have an interest, go for it. If it doesn't, it is not mandated by the college that you have to have a specialization. So even in a way, even in the way the college functions, like its philosophy is very, kind of, you do you. There's and even in terms of the roles that we get, I think we get a lot more strategy and GenMan roles in ISB than other B schools do. So I think that's just a testament to the fact that even companies are seeing value in hiring from ISB.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So if you're listening in and you're targeting a non-specialized MBA, ISB is the place to go to. All right. So I know that we've sort of supported you in your journey of getting into the Indian School of Business, but I mean, for the benefit of our viewers, could you tell us exactly when was it that you felt the need to do an MBA?
Okay. So I think right around like my second year to third year is when we had actively started thinking about higher education, further education after our undergrad. Like if you're coming from a very good tier 1 college, you have a little more liberty in terms of the opportunities you're getting at that stage. That is not always valid if you're from a not that good undergrad college, which was the case for me. So I knew the kind of opportunities I was getting were not exactly what I wanted out of life. I knew that I needed to take that extra step, and that realization came on very early on because there was a lack of opportunities that I think everyone goes through that journey on their own time. But for me, that happened earlier because I could see that the places I wanted to get to, like say a NICA or an HUL or whatever, these places were just not they were just not accessible to me, right? So MBA was a very natural progression, especially after the BCom. Then there was the question of whether to do it right now, later, kaam karke, without that. So of course, my Bania family believed that you do it right away. You get done with your education in one go. We don't trust you to come back to studies and study properly for your B school exams again. So my best case scenario, which thankfully worked out, was the YLP program. So in 2017 is around when I started thinking about this. YLP was applicable to students that were in their pre-final to final year. So at the time I was in my pre-final year, I knew I hadn't done as much as I'd wanted to show for my application. So even on my own, I did feel that I was not ready when I was applying for my pre-final year. But that kind of thought did sit in my head where I started to actively work towards it, so that I could comfortably maybe reach a place where in my third year, when I would be applying, I'd be a little more confident. So I think 2017 is when the ball started rolling. 2018 ke batch ke sab se is when I actually applied for my YLP application to ISB. I was in my pre-final year. And I remember I got my admit in like the end of 2018. And then it was that you finish your 20 months of work experience and you can join back. So I think my parents were happy that I had a B school admit, and I was happy that I could work before actually going for my MBA, because that was very important to me.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's sort of, I mean, I keep telling people that if you're targeting the Indian School of Business, that people tend to start a little late because it gives you that option of either in your pre-final year or your final year, so you start worrying about MBA and YSB and whatnot. You start worrying about it later on in college. And I've been telling, everybody I meet that, hey, start early, because you get a sense of, where the application is, and you get also the chance to apply twice. Yeah. You can take advantage of that and at least get a self-evaluation in place. And I think
exactly. Even if you were not to clear it in that round, you do realize what B schools are looking for, because otherwise you never actively open an application, see what questions they're asking, see what factors they're even considering. Had I not gotten in that year, I would have just reapplied next year, being better placed and knowing better what they're expecting out of me. So,
and it's not about getting that rejection which wakes you up. It's also that when you start imagining what you're going to put down on paper in some of the essay questions that come up, you sort of realize that, hey, I don't seem to be creating the kind of impact, that's going to get me.
I think it's a good tool to just start a lot of introspection. Even if that application ends up nowhere, it doesn't end up being submitted also, I think it still puts you in a mind space where you actively start thinking about what you want out of life, which is, I think, a good thing to do at any.
Absolutely. I think applying to a B school forces you to introspect and ask really uncomfortable questions of yourself, right? Anyhow, so I'm gonna still move on to I've asked you about when you started thinking about the MBA, but and you say around 2018 was when the serious ISB application sort of fructified. What about the GMAT? Because one aspect of applying to ISB is filling up the form and making sure all the recommendations are in order later on. But what about the GMAT exam? Right?
So it was around, like I said, 2017 was when I actively started thinking about an MBA. So passively, I had joined you and Abhishek sir to simultaneously kind of prepare for CAT, GMAT, etc.
I like you say passively you joined that.
You know the truth. I can't lie to you. I turned up unprepared. So So, but I think that was a good way to get in the scheme of things. That did continue, and then obviously as the exams got closer, even if I wasn't actively planning to apply that year, obviously if you're giving an exam, you do end up preparing anyway. So I think that is something I'd done for a year. Then we'd applied for ISB, and then after the first round is when they asked for the GMAT. So then as soon as my acceptance for that first round had come, then became do or die. Okay, now I actually have to give the GMAT, and now this is not passive. I have to get a decent score. So those, I think I would say probably like 6-7 months of passive preparation with 3-4 months of very active, very hardcore preparation is how I approach.
The last 3 months from when, let's say March or so, when the result came out to August, when you needed to submit. That was the portion where you were really putting your heart and soul into it.
And even then I tried to account for maybe a month extra, so that if in case I had to give a reattempt, I would have that timeline also in mind. Otherwise, then my whole application for that session goes for a toss. So just in case if I needed another attempt, I had a buffer for that as well.
Right, but that never happened, and you didn't have.
Thankfully, yes. GMAT is expensive.
But at the other end is the fact that a good manager always stays with a contingency plan, and then. So in a sense, I'm sugarcoating this for you. All right, but GMAT by no means is an easy ride. Yeah, it tends to challenge everybody differently. It tends to pose different questions of you. What was the biggest sort of challenge for you as far as the GMAT exam goes?
So if I were to just divide GMAT into verbal and quant was by far the harder thing for me. And I think a lot to do with that was just like my internal math fear, because it's not like I was scoring too well in verbal, but there was this blind faith कि वो तो कर लेंगे. Maths में वो blind faith भी नहीं था, even though it's not like I was doing wonders in either of those places when I started.
Right.
Quant was obviously like inherently a little tougher for me. Math में, I think there was also internally like that unwillingness to accept that maybe मुझे समझ आ जाएगा. So which because I've irritated you so many times for the most basic concepts. But so that was the harder bit, and that is also where I kind of put all my energy to. In the initial period, that was my plan, that I try to get that score up, and when that score is at an average that that okay, beyond this maybe I cannot get it higher, that's when I focus on the verbal bit, because that is the thing that pulls my score up overall. And I think that worked out, because that was the final result also. Like my math was an average, but my verbal was so good that eventually I did end up getting a 700 plus score.
Right. So I mean, my next question would have been, were you happy with your score? And I take that as a yes.
I was happy with my verbal score. Even with quant, I think I still messed it up because I let the fear kind of get into me. I started rechecking everything, even when it was not required. So I know even at the level that I was at, I did not perform as well. That I know, but it wasn't worth giving another attempt for.
If you had access to a time machine and you can go back in time and give, some advice to the younger Asmita, what would that be specific to the GMAT exam?
I think I would just tell myself to not check everything that I'm doing thrice, because I did not have a time constraint in any of the mocks that I'd given, and I'd given a lot of them. So for me to do that in my final paper was just out of plain, oh, I can't mess this up. That was just nervousness and jitters, nothing else.
Right. So
if I could just take it away, I'd be fine.
Okay. So more of exam day nerves, exam day temperament, just be calm, take it as it comes.
But I think that is what your preparation needs to be, 730, 740 for the exam nerves to get it to a 700. If the preparation is only 700, then we're not getting a good score.
Indeed so. Indeed so. All right. But surely you must have. I know for a fact that you did prepare in quite earnest for that. For those last 3 months, and I got to see a lot of you in person as well. But how many mock tests did you take? Is it about taking more marks, or is it about working the individual topics and sections within the exam? Which do you think paid you more dividends, and how many mock exams, if you remember how many you take?
So I think for me, what worked was working smarter than harder. I realized that doing every topic in depth is not something that's doable for me. And again, my serious prep had only 3 months, 4 months of time. So in that case, what I started to do was I actively was giving more mocks. If I saw that there was a recurring theme in the kind of questions I'm getting wrong, ek topic ka baar main galat kar rahi hu, then I went back and studied that topic in depth.
Right.
But that is the cycle I followed. More than that, I think as and when you give more and more mocks, you realize that there are certain formats of questions that do appear in the paper. Matlab, GMAT is supposed to be a lot more advanced, but वो CBSE type से वो question आ ही जाते हैं कि हर साल paper में वो question आता ही है. So once you start seeing that pattern, then you know okay, this is the kind of question I actively struggle with. So you know you have to prepare for that, and that's a lot more effective because then that's a mark done for you. Like it's not in the air. So कि शायद question आएगा तो solve कर लेंगे, नहीं वो question आएगा, वो सही हो जाएगा, वो confidence होता है फिर. So I don't know if you remember, I was maintaining a Google sheet. I gave about 10 to 12 mocks, and I was maintaining a Google sheet of all the things I got incorrect, and I would practice them at least 3-4 times again before finally removing them from that sheet. Okay, now I'm comfortable with this question type or topic or whatever. So
I think your ability to manage your own preparation sort of put you in good stead when it comes to a career in management. Because, for sure, you knew that you needed to work, but you analyzed it very deeply. And I think that's something that a lot of people can learn from you, right? Your experience at that.
There's some types of questions everyone will be comfortable with. You don't have to do them 10 times just to prove that you're studying. You do them correctly, directly in the mock, and then you can move on.
Okay. And so let's talk about, the application, because, we only have one application to talk about, the YLP application that you filled in, so now we know in hindsight that you obviously were successful at the application, but looking back, what was is there a specific aspect of your application or your candidature that you think, got you success through the process?
This is just again my opinion of my experience, and maybe it's not a universal rule or anything, but what I felt was so I was very realistic throughout the process about my shortcomings. So I knew that I wasn't from a good college, like a subpar college. I knew that I am not the greatest at academics. They were not bad, they were above average, but that's it, they were above average. I had not topped anything, I was not the gold medalist in anything. All of that I did not have in my application. I was also not a national level swimmer or a table tennis player. So I knew that there are these things that I just cannot solve for. What I can solve for is the work I do, right? So again, now in my college, work I do can be classified into internships, part-time jobs, or elected positions, PORs, clubs, events, whatever. Now, again, my college did not give me the opportunity to have a lot of those. We had inactives, which is something that I was actively a part of. Apart from that, I could not boast of having 10x, whatever PORs in some event. That was not an option for me. Internships, um, again, this was my experience. If you can get a chance at a good short-term internship, go for it. I just could not find that many. A lot of them were very certificate driven for the sake of it. बस लोगों से बात करना, so random things that I did not think added any value to me. So internships, I wasn't very keen on. One internship that looked good to me, I started and I ended up sticking with it for a year, which I think is what made the difference, because I was one of the few people who'd actively worked almost full time while I was in college in that year. So my interview and my essays were basically all about my work experience then, which is not something most college kids can boast of, right? So acads I could not do, extracurriculars I could not do, but my work I was confident with. And there also, not just from an application point of view, but also because I was just interested to learn. I ended up working in multiple projects while I was there. I was actively a part of the decision-making process. So I knew everything in and out. It was very hands-on, big picture, startup. Like I got the best of everything a startup has to offer in that 1 year. And I think that is essentially what set my profile apart from the rest.
Absolutely. I think it rings true because, I mean, again, something that, that I keep saying to students is that you need to find that one spark, right? One thing that sort of defines you and sets you apart from everybody else. And in your case, that seems to have been that startup experience of yours. And I remember multiple times when we even used to chat about it, and it did stand out, right, in terms of what we portray in the application as well.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's an unfair question to ask, given that the YLP application itself, it spans about 6 to 8 months. You start as early as January and then finish, taking your interviews quite late in October or so, right? But just for the sake of an answer, how long do you think the application itself takes? Because there is still an essay to write. There's still the LORs to sort of draft and other things that you need to sort of put in place. So typically, how much time does one give? Does one give oneself when targeting a B school application?
So B school application will have two kinds of questions, honestly. One will be very straightforward, fact-based. That, depending on your efficiency, you can finish in half an hour or you can procrastinate and do it till a month. That's up to you. For things that are more introspection-based, which are primarily your essays and anything that requires a follow-up, which is an LOR, right? Those are things that you have to count enough time for. LOR, because obviously it's dependent on other people, so you do have to follow up. So keep that time aside. And then essays, like I mentioned earlier, B school applications force you to introspect. They force you to find what your story is about. They force you to think about what you want. And these are not questions that can be answered in half an hour. So depending on how convinced you are with your story, I think that is the part that takes more time. Once you have it written, then I would say I think I ended up taking about a week for my essays, accounting for work, accounting for college, all of that, not more than that. The introspection part, that does take time. And that's person to person, I think, depends on how lost you are.
Absolutely. So anywhere from a week to maybe three weeks or so, depending on, as you very rightly put, depending on your motivation and how hard to please you are. But going by that definition, you seem to be very easy to please, Asmita.
No, I think, like I said, by the time I was applying in my third year, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to portray, because I had been thinking about it for a year. So if my case is to be taken, I've prepped for GMAT for a year, I've prepped for YLP for a year. So maybe I'm the other extreme.
Absolutely. No, practice does make a man perfect. And especially when it comes to career choice, I think thinking about it, mulling it over months together, because every odd day you can wake up thinking, well, I think I need to change it a little, right? Or sometimes you can just wake up with the realization that, yes, this is really my calling.
I think do account for essays and everything. The only thing that I did actively do was that instead of first trying to make the perfect draft, I first put a dump of everything, every tiny thing. And then maybe some things did not seem as important to me, but other people seem to think that they held value, versus something that I was very attached to. Ki, ye to best cheez kari hai maine life. Man, people like, listen, this means nothing. So taking that opinion, getting that sense check that what you think you're portraying is actually what you're portraying. Of course, getting it read by alums, you, friends, people who know you closely. That is an important part of the essay making process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to take much of your time, but I do want you to talk about your experience with Mentors Capital, and be truthful about it, I guess.
See, I can't say anything bad about it because the success rate is already there. This interview is happening because it worked out.
For a minute, I was wondering what you're going to say. I can't say anything bad because I've been, tied under contract. I can't say anything bad.
But like I said, I have when I started the application process, I was ready to give up when they asked for extracurriculars. I was like, that's it, I'm not getting in. They asked for too much. So I think you both were like the main reason that like, no, do it anyway. I don't think I would have ended up finishing my application if it weren't for the two of you. And that is, I think, just that is the application process itself and just like encouragement and everything. But even when it came to academics, hardcore, you know how much I've annoyed you with my Google Sheets. I've asked you the same doubt 5 times. I've understood the same concept from you 5 times. Like the kind of support that I got was unparalleled. So my experience was obviously amazing.
How would you describe us in one word or one phrase?
I know I know what you're going to say when I say this word, but like it was very holistic. Academics, it was sorted. Application, encouragement, mentoring, sorted everything. I did not go for any third party, anything. Like I just, every little to bigger thing, I just came to you both.
Okay. I think that's a fair point. I wonder what you think I would be saying, but we'll let that pass for now. But this was a real fun interview, Asmita. I mean, I think we've been in sprints at different points in time through the course of this. But I hope that somebody watching this interview can take inspiration, because there are a lot of people, who tend to think that getting into one of the IIMs or ISBs, you have to go to an IIT or you have to go to SRCC or only then, some of these doors open. But I think you're a very good inspiration for all of those people who are looking up and have high dreams and should actually believe in their deeds to make their way to success. Yeah. So thanks for taking time out today. I wish you all the very best at Laika and onwards into your corporate career. But do stay in touch with us.
Yes, sir, definitely. Thank you for having me.